Hello and welcome to the award-winning Ardent Atheist, where reason reigns supreme, not frogs and fish. Today's episode brought to you by billions of years of evolution. Sitting next to me is my co-host and producer, Heather Henderson.
Hi, everybody.
You know Heather from the Facebooks, on the inner tubes, and from our other hit podcast, Skeptically Yours. You can find links to our guest website, join our Twitter and Facebook feeds, subscribe to our premium ad-free 90-minute full-length episodes, and our email at ardentatheist.com.
If you'd like to take part in the live chat moderated by the author of the well-known blog, Hit and Miss, Joe Swam, go to ardentatheist.com/live and chat us up right now.
He writes a great blog. And please go to iTunes, subscribe to our podcast for free, and write a review. Help us get in the top 10. You may also go to ardentatheist.com/premium and subscribe to our premium ad-free content for a measly $10 per year.
Subscribe now or you're fired.
Fired from what?
Whatever they're doing.
You can't fire people just because they don't subscribe to our show.
Why not?
Because it's immoral.
You disagree with me?
Yeah, I do.
You're fired.
Oh, hell.
We only have 2 rules on the show. Rule number 1, guests may plug anything they want. We're not hypocrites. Go subscribe.
And rule number 2, if your listener has ever been offended by anything, get a sledgehammer and destroy your computer now. This show has no restrictions on language or content and certainly has nothing for you, you Seventh-day Adventist jagoff. We're coming to you live from E&H Studios in sunny Studio City, California. In the Studio City tonight, we have Ryan Bell and Todd Glass. You know these guys from Showbiz.
I'm annoyed you already.
Why? What'd I do?
I didn't like the opening. It's too loud.
Did I? Yeah?
No.
There's a slider. You can turn down
Start
your headphones.
over.
No, I like it.
Thanks for being here, Todd.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's a perfect show to have you join us for because Ryan Bell, I don't know, former pastor, I don't know what to say. Ryan Bell has decided you put a blog up and blew the world open, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, it did kind of go crazy. I've been writing for Huffington Post for a while, and I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Well, what other things were you writing before for the Post?
I was in the
religious.
in the religion section. It was usually social justice from a faith-based perspective. Immigration reform, healthcare reform, that kind of stuff, just from a faith-based perspective.
I see.
Kind of boring.
And now?
Now there's sizzle.
Well, what you did was you posted, and a lot of atheists kind of freak out when I tell them about your blog post. When you said that you were going to live for a year as an atheist, without God is one of the things, to quote what you said. You also said that you were going to read atheist scriptures, I think was...
Sacred text.
Sacred text.
Sacred
that was
text.
it, right.
That's great.
Which I don't think was in quotes. Which
It
would have
was
been,
in quotes.
Was it?
Oh,
Okay,
yes,
good.
check.
Good. And people freak out a little bit when because there is no such thing. But we definitely have people that we put on a pedestal in our community. You've already probably figured that out.
Yeah.
I am one of them.
Yes, which is why I'm here tonight, to learn everything I can learn.
Go ahead, Todd.
No, I was going to say, because I don't want to forget to say it, that, the last few times you called me, and I really love doing the show, and then I got to a point in my own podcast and when I did other shows that I stopped. But I'll tell you, when you made this call, it got me thinking that I didn't want to argue about not believing. As much as I love the show, I got tired of arguing that I didn't believe.
It's not for everybody and forever, for sure.
And I realized it takes people to still do it. I didn't have the energy, obviously. The reason I got tired of it is I thought, it's funny that they say certain people, not everybody says this, there's certain religious people that don't say this, but if they didn't believe in a God, then there'd be anarchy. And I always think there'd be anarchy in the world if at one point, now hopefully you wait and you listen and you listen and you listen, one point, if we didn't just say we're right and have to ignore other people, the world's, a round type of a thing.
Right.
It sounds piggish and it sounds wrong, but there are times in this world where we deem other people, after you've listened and you learned, and we go, okay, we have to move on. We can't just keep going, all right, we'll disagree to disagree. The people that are right, and hopefully we are, just have to move forward, and the people that are arguing, hey, look, I don't care. I'm right. I'm moving forward with this.
Right.
And I know there's the two parts. There's one, disproving God, and then the other bigger one for me, to be honest, is just why anybody would want to be involved with organized religion.
Yeah.
So, but then I heard this, and I'm like, it got me very interested, and and the first thing I did think was, he won't have to change that much, because I think it's weird. Things have changed a lot in the last 20 years, but I used to have to tell people I still believe in love and caring and giving, and it's just so you're not gonna really have to change anything.
Yeah.
Well, when I used to be a Christian. I was going to be an evangelist. That was my hope. That was my goal. I held Bible studies. I was evangelizing to anybody who would come into my house. And my plan was to end up with my own church. I was building toward that. I've always wanted to be a performer, and I knew being a performer, you get pussy. So I was pursuing it aggressively until I finally figured out when I got to Leviticus, and I was studying the Bible. But when I got to Leviticus and I had questions about it, it really was bugging me. And I went to my pastor and I said, I need you to help me understand, why would God find joy in the murder of a dove? I need to understand, are we worshiping a God that finds joy in killing a dove? Ever did that? And there were no answers. Same reason my mom ended up becoming an atheist. I posed this to her. She was trying to save my soul after I became an atheist. I posed this to her. You go to heaven. You know I'm going to hell. Probably my sister, just based on what we know about her. Now, here's the question. How do you live eternity knowing we're writhing in pain and fire? Where is joy in that? How's that possible? And she went out and started talking to pastors and people and asking them, help me reconcile this. I need to figure this out.
What'd they say?
They couldn't. They all had different answers. There was no answer to this. There were a lot of answers that were bullshit that were offered. God wipes away all tears. What, he's going to reset her mind? She said that to me. He's just going to flash a light in my eye and boom, I forget my kids?
Men in
like
Black.
Men in Black,
Yes.
that little zapper thing.
Yeah.
So everybody had different possible answers. No one had a real good answer. Anyway, to get back to the point. As I came out, no, it's my fault. I came out of my religion worried that people would think that I was immoral, that I didn't have a base from which to be a good person. Fact is, that process turned me from a white trash thief, as I was as a kid, coming out of that into someone who understood morality and the importance of it, and I didn't have to do it because someone was watching. So I know what you're talking about. When you come out of this, you're not sure where you're going to land, and you want people to believe you and trust you and not think of you as this awful Satanistic thing.
Well, of course, if you don't believe in God, you believe in Satan. I mean, that's just the way it is.
That's the default setting, I guess.
That is the
Can
default
I ask,
setting.
I wanted to ask him a question.
I want you to go, man.
And one of the things that I thought on the way over here is because you get so, you get fired up about it. But in the history of this world, whenever we've made change, people get fired up about it. But I didn't want to come off ever as like not loving and, we're all here and we're all seems to me, loving people. But whenever people say to me they want to go back to a time, there seems to be a time that a lot of religious people want to go back to.
Yeah.
And I would imagine when people prayed and
Like
when
the
they believed in it.
Crusades.
But if you ask anybody the year that they would go back to, I never have, and I would maybe hypothetically ask you, what year do you think they would say? Like the 50s or the 60s? What year if you're going to make people want to say be religious and be involved with organized religion, you have to point to a year, then open up the computer, and we're going to go look at that year and see what it was like when people did all that stuff. And if it's a great year or a great period, I'd want to go back.
Let's build a machine and
so
do it.
what is the year that, like, when more people went to church and more people were religious and things were just a little better? What year would you think they would say?
I mean, that was the time period when the church was working, when religion in America was working for most people, was probably, off the top of my head, I'd say like the 50s, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say that because, obviously I've already thought that that's what most people would say. And then I went, if you open up a computer, and it reminds me of that thing that says we're supposed to want to go forward to a time that's better for everybody, not backwards to a time that's better for you. For a white male, I always say lazily, for a fat white male, I get it why you'd want to go back because it's easier when there's, but whatever, and I'm not looking to nitpick. If they said in the 50s and there was maybe there were a few little things bad, hey, but there's monstrosities. So, like, you can't sell anybody on it because if you did, you'd go 1950, open up your computer and look what was going on. It is better now in a sense.
In many senses. In
many senses, kindness, fairness.
I think in nearly every measure, if you look at history in 50-year chunks, it gets exponentially better.
Just in terms of human rights, equality.
Everything.
Yes.
Virtually everything.
Yep.
Just everything.
Race relations.
Do we have problems?
Everything.
Yeah, we have problems. Are there still people starving? Yeah, but it's less and it's better every 50 years.
Well, some people say that that more bad things are happening, but that's really only because we have the internet and everyone can see it now.
Yeah. Perception has changed.
Well, I don't defy. Look, if you're going to give people a reason I don't want to unrealistically think it's better now. There's obviously a lot of bad things going on now, but I agree. I think there are so many things that are better. I always think if Mr. Rogers could answer this question, even though back then people wore their hair like his and sweaters and it was more clean cut and family photos, but if he said, when would you want to come back?
Yeah.
Would you want to come back to the way it is now, or would you want to come back to the way it was in 1950? He would go, now.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because Mr. Rogers said that if it's mentionable, it's manageable.
Yeah.
And back then, nothing was mentionable. That was the whole big thing. There was with everybody going back. Anyway, that was my point.
Well, hey,
I
Mr.
think
Rogers was a
framing-
religious man too.
Framing the conversation in this way, too, I think really points out that Christianity in America is really a cultural phenomenon as opposed to even a religious or a spiritual thing. I mean, if people want to go back to a time in the culture when the culture was working better for them, that doesn't really have anything to do with God or spirituality
Right.
or anything like that anyway. I mean, it really has to do with white supremacy in this case, if we're talking about the 1950s or a
Right.
time when white males dominated the culture, and now there's a loss of power. There's a sense of people losing power, losing their place
Right.
in society, and they're grasping back. And the culture wars seem to me largely the anxiety that's resulting from pluralization in our country, and people are losing that grip on what they thought was comfortable for them, and
Right.
they're having to share power with other people.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I get it. Hey, look, if I was in a room with 10 people, it makes it simple for me. Instead of the world, looking at the world, look at a room. There was 10 people, and I could convince everybody that I was the one in charge. It's easier. You clean, you'll make me my dinner. Sure, and then when everybody figures out in the room, one day when I'm out maybe eating at a restaurant, they all figure out they're all equal, and I get back, I walk into what I think is like, what's going on?
Yeah, right.
Oh, everybody figured out that everybody's equal, and now there's mayhem. I think that's where we're at now in the world. I
It's
think
share time.
there's a lot of people that figuring it out, like, wait a second.
Yeah.
And then once one group gets their rights, another group affectionately goes, I'd like what's fair to me too.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, I think Chris Rock has a joke that you can do a spring cleaning and clean up your house without making a mess. But if you really want to do a deep cleaning, things get ugly.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to come around full circle, where now the Christians are all claiming that they're being oppressed because they can't live the way they want to live, which means oppressing homosexuals. I don't want to have to look at a guy kiss. So you can't take away my right to not have to see that. It's the dumbest argument in the world. And I know that this is kind of one of the problems that started you on the path you're on
we
now.
should go
right,
back.
Ryan?
I think we've gone pretty
No,
far.
no,
we
that's
should
where
go
we're
back to
back to
Ryan.
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Ryan, let's start with you were kicked out of your church. Tell me about this.
Yeah, I mean, we came to a parting of the ways. The denomination, the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, the way our system works is that the regional governance body is the one that employs all the clergy, and so they have the hiring and firing power over clergy. And so over the last probably 5 to 6 years in particular, they had just an increasing number of problems with me, and I started at the Hollywood Seventh-day Adventist Church in 2005.
Where's that one located? Is that the?
It's a kind of a lavender-colored spaceship-looking thing that's right on the 101 freeway.
Okay.
It sits right on Hollywood Boulevard and the 101 freeway.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Yeah, and it looks like a rocket ship, and it's kind of cool. So when 2008 came along, early 2008, and there was a campaign, Proposition 8 here in California to ban same-sex marriage in California. A few of us, the progressives within the church, were like, this doesn't look so good. I mean, it's really conservative Christians driving this campaign, and there's really no secular argument for why same-sex couples shouldn't be allowed to get married. It's really only a religious argument, and we don't make laws based exclusively off religious arguments in this country.
I don't know why we haven't seen more clergy step up and go, stop it, stop this.
Well,
Yeah.
they're
Stop it."
afraid.
Well, what we did we created a little group called Adventists Against Prop 8, and there were like 6 of us. And then we put up a petition online, and really thousands of people came out of the woodwork and signed this petition. Hundreds and hundreds of former Adventists that were gay and lesbian and that had left the church years back and couldn't believe they were writing to a pastor, like a Facebook message or an email saying, I haven't talked to a pastor in X number of years, and is this possible? Can this be true? And really at that point, we had only made a stand for the religious liberty argument. That was really the only argument we made, because we were trying to get as wide an audience as we could with people that we knew that would still feel that homosexuality was wrong in some way. So we were trying to cast a wide net and just say, look, even if you think for some reason that God disapproves of same-sex relationships, at least admit that people are entitled in the United States of America to pursue their happiness, without being impeded by people of other belief systems. And
That didn't go over well. Huh?
it didn't go over that well. And we have the ironic thing about that is the Seventh-day Adventist Church actually has a really robust religious liberty campaign within the church because we worship on Saturday. We're one of the few Christians that worship on the Jewish Sabbath, and we're always worried that someone's going to make us worship on Sunday. And so we have this religious liberty concept, which is that people should be able to worship God and carry out their lives according to their own conscience. And we've even defended the rights of, like, for example, the Santeria religion to sacrifice chickens in a residential zone where some residents were trying to say, you can't sacrifice chickens here. This is not zoned as a slaughterhouse.
So that's okay.
That's okay. Like, so then some of our attorneys participated in that lawsuit to say, no, we should let these people do this.
Well, let's be clear. They only worship and kill what they eat. I want to be clear on that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Here's what always
I don't know either.
Here's what always confuses me. And again, I'm always open to learn. If I say something, I'm on the right track, and then I go off. I'm always read an email and go, ooh, I didn't say that right. But with that in mind, what confuses me about organized religion is that even if the part that I admire them, but the groups sort of like you that will say, all right, well, I want to be part of this, but we're going to start another sort of group, like right. like in the Jewish tradition they have Orthodox, and then sometimes the group that you're aligning yourself with is so evil. And I use the Ku Klux Klan as an example, and then I almost went to say, oh, don't compare them to the Ku Klux Klan, and I go, no, I can.
Yeah, you can.
They've done a lot of, just because they dress nicer and their hair looks better and they wear nicer clothes and they don't look as evil, they have done evil things. By the way, if we're willing to say that being gay is hands down, just like you can't go around saying, open heart surgery, it doesn't always work, and just agree to disagree. No, you can't. The facts are in. My friend said you will be disbarred if you, as a child therapist, you will be equivalent to disbarred if you tell a child, try to do conversion therapy.
Right.
So if that's true and you want to, first of all, it's not open for debate. It is true. The facts are in. So now that we know that, there is evil. They have, like Phil Donahue said, we hope to see live the day where the Catholic Church will apologize to a lot of parents of gay children that drove them to their death.
Yeah.
And by the way, don't ever be dramatic to make a point because you lose it. And that's not. If being gay is not an illness and they were telling kids to pray that you'll be all right, then they are monsters.
Yeah.
They are monsters. So maybe it's better not to have Ku Klux Klan Light or Ku Klux Klan and give it a different name. Maybe you should just not be a part of the Ku Klux Klan. So that's my problem with those groups. Even though when they're out there and there's a church and they're very much like pro-gay, and yes, I admire it, but you're attaching yourself to a group that they're basically, the word monster is fair.
Yeah, my opinion is that the only ones, for the most part, that I see in our country doing religion right, and I've read the Bible more than once over and over again and continue to read it, is Westboro Baptist Church. They're the only ones that are adhering to the fucking Bible.
Trying to really...
Everybody else is just picking and choosing.
Whose is that?
Westboro's those assholes that
picket.
God hates fags.
God
They
hates
go in
fags.
front of churches and they go...
pick-
Hey,
they
at
go to
least-
funerals.
Yeah.
They
You know
believe
what?
that. They
At least,
believe...
hey, by the way, I agree in a twisted way. I understand what you mean. It's like, it seems like what a lot of organized religion does, they wait till it's going to hit their pocket. They're never dragging and spitting people in the right direction. Once they realize, oh, we're going to shut down. Because, it's like Bill Maher said. He goes, kids today, they have gay friends. So you can't show them videos anymore. And the church, at the end of it, when they crumble and history writes itself, because I know it, maybe I'm silly the way I say it. The church might say things like, Bill Maher, or all these people that are anti-God. When history writes itself, you crumbled yourself all by yourself.
Right.
When you tell evil things about gay kids, it's not 1950 where they don't have any gay friends. Now these gay kids hear that stuff that you're saying. They have gay friends in school. They have gay cousins. They have gay parents. And they go, what are you talking about? And what happens is, even if religion has something else good to offer, let's say it does, hypothetically, they're dead fucking wrong with this, but they have a lot of other good things. Once you say something so off and so crazy, people write off the rest of what you have to say. And that's your fault,
I
not
think it's
you.
important to say, it's important to say, too, that there are Christian groups that are not anti-gay and haven't been
No, that's what I'm
for
saying.
ages.
But don't you
the
think...
Episcopal Church, for example, Unitarian Universalist, United Church of Christ, these churches, the parts of the Methodist Church...
Are they just divisions of it, or are they like from the beginning they were always?
I don't know from the beginning. I think all kinds of social transformations happen over time. So there was a time when most all churches were segregated too, racially segregated, and over time we kind of went, we should have known better. We were sort of collectively blinded to the evil of racism. And gradually groups came to their senses, including, basically all religious groups, it seems like.
What's after gay? Which group's coming up after gay that's being oppressed?
Transsexuals?
Transsexuals.
Yeah, that
probably.
seems
Well, I
like
kind of
they're-
put them all together. I'm a bisexual, and so I think the bisexuals, the transsexuals, the gays.
No, I think there's going to be
you
a
think it's
group
gonna be different?
that, you know, what happens is they get all, what happens is you can always smell when the group's getting ready to take on the next one. They go, as far as gay marriage goes, I don't care. Let people do what they want. And then they go to the next group because they know.
Just they'll
Well,
let
and
us know what's next.
There's tension even within the LGBT community with trans people, and that's still an emerging, I think, emerging area.
I had a friend, lesbian, sitting in that chair, jumping down my ass because she didn't believe bisexuality was even a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's debate about that too.
so
People are like,
amazing.
yeah, exactly.
I want to know what was the lightning bolt that hit you that made you say, okay, I'm going to live as an atheist for a year? What was the thing that you were just like, that's it, I'm doing this?
It wasn't a lightning bolt. I guess it was one of those things. It was almost like a drinking game. You're like, I'm gonna do that for a year. It wasn't quite that flippant, but I was at lunch with a friend, and I had a book in my hand called Religion Without God by a philosopher named Ronald Dworkin, and set it down, went to the bathroom, came back, and he was looking at my book, and he's like, what is this? And I said, oh, it's just a book I wanted to read. And he's like, that's really interesting. I'd like to, look at that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking of just giving up on God for a year. And I said it kind of like,
and it just came out of nowhere.
It kind of came out of nowhere. He's like, you should totally do that. And I was like, huh, yeah, maybe I will, And then I said, yeah, maybe I'll do that. And, like A.J. Jacobs in reverse, like we'll do a year of living without God. And then he's like, you should blog about that. And I'm like, well, I don't know if anybody's going to read that. And he's like, well, I'd read it. And I said, okay, well, maybe I will. And I got the cheapest, ugliest blog template, like just the simplest, plainest blog template for free that I could get, and
the kind of template that Jesus would have.
The kind of yeah, exactly. Simple, no flash, no bling, just simple, clean, pure template.
What is it that you would be giving up?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I want to get into this, man. And by the way, we're doing no breaks. We're going to go for an hour and a half.
Great.
We're going to take a break at the end of the hour, and then we'll do another 30. But that's just to reset everything. So we're not doing ad time. Go on.
So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because that's the first thing I thought too. I said, well, what am I going to give up? Well, Christianity, I think, is about faith and practice, both. It's about things you believe and things that you do, and it's a performative thing. You put your faith into action, and so part of some of those actions are like praying, going to church, reading your Bible, not just to critique it, but to like learn from it and get inspiration from it. So those were the three things that I could think of that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to pray. I mean, and to people with Christian ears, to say you're not going to pray for a year, it sounds terrifying.
Yeah,
they're freaked out. Like, what if you're?
To some, it's sinful.
Let me interject
what if
really
your kid
quick.
Gets sick,
Let me interject real quick. I think it's funny. Like, I even feel bad when people ask me, like, when I'm talking about this, and they'll say to me, like, well, like, what about if you just pray to yourself? I go, of course, that's real. That's if you close your eyes and go, you know what, this year I'm going to try to, be a little more patient with my kids. Or that's real.
Like meditating.
Yeah, of course. Who would defy that you can go inward? But anyway, so that's you really wouldn't be giving up praying. You would just be praying to the person that's in charge, and that would be yourself. So
yeah,
you wouldn't even,
it's more like asking for favors from God. That kind of like Santa Claus God. And one of the things I'm actually really interested in that I want to do this in the course of this year is to talk to people who believe in God. And say, do you believe in God? And if they say yes, then to say, well, what God do you believe in? Like, what does it look like? What's the image that pops to your mind? Is it
welcome to my world?
Yeah,
because this is what we do. I go online and I talk to people who believe in God, and I say, well, describe him to me. Give me your proof.
Yeah,
it's all over the world.
She does
it's all
it
over
every
the
day.
place.
She does it every day on Facebook.
It's all over the place. They
really?
can't, my God, you'll hear this. Well, my God would never murder a small child or let a child starve. My God.
So everybody's making up their own religion anyway.
That's correct.
Right.
Everyone's God is different.
But they won't let other people make up their to be absent of religion.
Yes.
So, and I think that's actually true. And one of the interesting observations that I've made, even in just 1 week, is that a commitment to live as an atheist or to say, I'm not going to live as a Christian this year is actually not so different than the way I've been living.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. You're
I
not
mean-
going out. You don't feel all of a sudden like you want to go out and murder people, do you?
Of course not. Of course not. And I was
Then you're
never.
not doing it right.
I was everybody on the web, on my Facebook. I mean on Facebook and on my blog is like, I bet he balks at the first baby buffet. Like
That's the best joke.
Well, now that's the joke, by the way. When you see that from an atheist,
Yeah, the first time I saw that, I'm like, what?
I know, right? Well,
Like, who's eating baby? Are you guys really eating babies?
what we're doing is we're taking that extreme view of ourselves and we're making light of it in order to take the power out of it. That's what's happening.
Of
when you see
course,
that.
yeah,
And, you
yeah.
know, and also, I can imagine somebody religious saying, they're so sure they're right, and what really isn't on their side. And I will go back to what I said a second ago or a minute ago because I think it's very fair. You when it was all, and you said like the 50s. It never worked. You've had a chance. It's like if somebody said, let's try religion for a year. What about 2 years? Okay, it's not working. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I want to keep going to show how ridiculous. Okay, give it 6 years. How many years before, if we acknowledge technology.
Grandpa, you're going to keep doing this?
It's had a fair chance. It's like, how many years have we been doing it? And it's like, and again, you have to be able to point to a year. Because let me tell you something. Young people are not getting dumber. Everyone like to believe they are, but they're not. They're getting smarter. And if you want to keep them and keep this a religious world, you have to point to a year where there was harmony. And we always go, if there wasn't a God, there'd be anarchy. Well, there was more anarchy when more people believed in God and went to church.
What would you say, though, if someone said, like, the progress of religion is moving in the right direction? In other words, it's not about going back to an ideal year. It's about still pressing forward to a time in the future.
I wouldn't want to, on this alone, and I don't know if what's the difference between a priest and a pastor?
Just the different. I mean,
Sounds like
Catholics
the
have,
worst joke setup I've ever heard.
Yeah. I don't know. Tell me, what is it?
Well, here's what we said
One's
last
a Catholic
night.
and one's not, typically.
Even
It's
if
just
you,
Catholic.
even
Priest
if you
is a
were
pastor.
willing to say, like, when it comes to, I like to look. Great people make mistakes. We're not. But it depends what the mistakes are, and. When it comes to this alone, we thought about this last night. Let's say you're willing to say, a lot of Catholic churches still believe in hitting it, spare the church. Okay, let's say I'm even willing to agree to disagree on that. The mere fact, and I think it was in 70, whatever year it is, it doesn't matter. The fact that it was in 70, that they were hitting children with rulers because they were left-handed. On that alone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to follow the barbaric, because can anybody argue that the hitting they can? Is there anyone going, well, that barbaric act of a group of people hitting a child because he was left-handed with a ruler?
But was that just Catholics doing that?
Yeah, it was Catholics. Catholic
Now,
nuns
some
are
people
known
might go
for
there
that.
My
was-
public
okay.
middle school had a paddle with like holes
Okay,
in it. Like
here's okay. I thought about that on the way over here. Let's say it was public schools too.
Yeah.
Shame more on the people that have a relationship with God,
Right.
because you think they'd give clarity and they'd hear God go, "No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I made him that way.
Right.
No, stop hitting him."
Yeah.
So if public schools did it, that's one thing. But if someone that claims that they have a relationship with God, and that God that they have a relationship with said, "For the love of God, stop that." Look, stupidity is not on a curve of religion. Stupidity is stupidity. They don't get to be real stupid and then less stupid. And the fact that they did that 10 minutes ago in the history of this world, they were
Blink.
taking a ruler and whacking a kid's hand. On that alone.
Yeah.
I
Well,
go.
the list goes on. It just goes on and on to witch burning. To you brought it up earlier to the way black people were treated, and it was supported by the church. I had a guy sitting in this chair across from me, a friend of mine, a comic. I'm not going to name him now, but we were talking about the gay thing, and I was making my argument that it should never be argued about. Ever. We should never argue about whether it is natural, whether they can find a gene. It's about freedom. It's fucking about freedom. You don't have the right to restrict the freedoms of others, no matter what, whether your Bible or your God or your secret voice or your fucking fairy tells you that the gays shouldn't have sex. It's about freedom. Never argue it, in my opinion, on anything. And he said to me, looked me in the eye, a good friend, and he goes, but what's next? He didn't hear any of it. He just goes, what's next?
It's the slippery slope.
And
Next
it
thing you know,
was.
people are going to be having sex with dogs.
It's not a
you know.
slippery slope. That's a dive off a fucking cliff of retardation. There's no slope there. That's beyond stupid. It makes me crazy.
Yeah.
So, and the fact of the matter is, if you're going to do that math, by the way, you got to go back the other way too, okay? Because if you're worried that legalizing gay marriage will cause people to want to fuck dogs and then demand the right to marry the dog, then what you have to do is go back and you have to stop marriage altogether. Because if you're going to use your mathematics, it was the fact that you made marriage that created gay marriage and then made the dog marriage. So get rid of all of it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Your dog is flinching over here. I think he's a little
know, right?
upset.
Upset.
He ran for cover.
So that's that.
I like to see someone that gets as passionate
You
as
get me fired up, man, and that's one for me. It's if you're listening now, please listen to me carefully. Never argue about whether or not it's natural. You argue about freedom. That's the only.
Can
place to
I
argue.
go back to the one more thing? Like, you know, like sometimes things get so convoluted, and then people want to quote the Bible. That's why I say don't ever disprove the Bible by quoting something else in the Bible.
Right,
It's
right,
just
right.
you know,
Yeah,
go,
it's a
well, it
mistake,
also
yeah.
says this, because then you're giving it validity that it's worth quoting.
Yeah, you're suggesting there's a value at all.
Right. So I don't even. But I go back to the hitting of the children with a hand. Like, how come? Like when you ask an average, if you would ask a religious person that question, if you go, "Hey, Helen, I've seen what they're like when they're passionate. You know, they're up at the pulpit and you see them on television." What would they say? Hey, how embarrassed are you about that? I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Go. Go ahead. Tell me how that more. Because if you really got how. I love the word. It's barbaric. You're a monster. You're hitting a child. Even if I'm willing again to go, what about when a child does something wrong? We could go back and forth. I'm trying to find one thing that they are mortified about. And I'm willing to bypass a lot of other stuff. Okay, forget about that. We're not sure about the gay. We'll agree to disagree. For discipline, we'll agree to disagree. How about one? I want to find one thing that they will ever say, because they always tell people, please, Father, forgive me for I've sinned. What about that? I've never heard you. I've went on YouTube. I don't hear them apologizing. What the fuck were we thinking? No one wants to follow us.
Right.
We were hitting children and bringing blood to their knuckles because they were born left-handed. They don't address it.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, what does the clergy say on this? And Heather has a question.
I have a question from the wall.
Yeah. We'll get that after that.
Okay.
What's your reaction to this?
Well, I've never hit anybody with a ruler. That's my. First of all, that's the first thing I want to say.
You got me to do a spit take.
There was water coming out your nose, I think, right there.
So I mean, is there anything in the past of your church? And, listen, I know you were already on the ropes with regard to at least religion, if not God.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what I read on your blog,
Right.
you were questioning your faith before this. That's
Of course.
That's where this has been.
I mean, I
leading
think
to.
anybody that's has faith and doesn't question it, I mean, that's a problem. I mean, I think faith is not a static thing. I mean, faith has to be questioned at all times, I think, for it to be a living thing. I mean, faith is not a static thing like I've got my phone in my hand and now I have it. It's like faith is not something you have and you put in your pocket and now you have it or you give it away. I mean, this is just it's what Christians will say is faith is a relationship not only with God but with other people that's conducted around a certain kind of ethical values that Jesus lived out and portrayed. And the process of understanding and reading the Bible is super complicated, and I think there are ways of understanding and reading the Bible that begin to make sense out of some of the complexities and idiosyncrasies that we find in the Bible. But so many Christians just read it literally. And this is what was so funny about A.J. Jacobs' experiment of a year of living biblically. He went through the Bible from the beginning to the end, and he said, I'm going to write down every command, everything that the Bible says that you're supposed to do, and then do it, like literally and woodenly, and just,
ignoring the possibility of any figurative.
Right, exactly. So if it said, you shouldn't cut your beard, then he's going to let his beard grow. And if he says he shouldn't have, touch his wife, not just have sex, but not touch his wife while she's menstruating, then he couldn't touch her. Or maybe even not share the same bed with her or anything. So he had to rearrange his house.
I was convinced that's actually what motivated him to do it.
Right.
So,
so I mean, that's the kind of thing and he, his was kind of a humorous type of thing where he was saying, let me show. I don't know what his motivation was, but in the end, some of the insights were, the Bible is not like that. The Bible is not a cookbook, to be followed woodenly, slavishly in that way. It's a story, myths, poetry, history, not the way we think of history, but a kind of narrative history of the Hebrew people, and it's not meant to be followed and obeyed in a literal fashion.
Okay.
In that way.
I have a question for you. I wonder if you're thinking the same question. How do you know?
How do I know what?
You just made a very specific declaration of what the Bible is meant to be, how it's meant to be used?
Yeah, no, I mean,
How do you know?
well, I think the fact that it was written and put together over millennia, like it's not a book that someone sat down and wrote like last week and said, "Here, go do this." It's more of a compendium of literature over.
Does the Bible somewhere in the Bible does the Bible tell us this?
I mean, there are places that talk about that the Bible is useful for instruction, but I mean, it's that's a very specific thing toward the end of the New Testament, where Paul is admonishing the churches to follow the way of Jesus and to follow certain instructions. But even those instructions are very contextually oriented. So for specific groups of people in specific situations, in specific neighborhoods and towns, and he was telling them, don't fight with each other, don't argue with each other, don't get into sexual immorality with each other, because screw up your lives and screw up your family and your relationships with people in the neighborhood. So I mean, there were very specific types of things, and out of those specifics, people have drawn generalizations and general practices, ethical practices that people.
But did Jesus not say, "I did not come to change the law"?
He did.
So in that
But
line,
he also did
in that
change
passage alone, it sounds like the Bible is the law. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but he also at the same time, and again, here I am now defending the Bible, which is not the thing.
Here's where I get
Go.
Here's where I get we're not being as productive as we can be. And maybe I'm wrong, so I will be passionate, and then I will shut up and listen, that we're getting into this again, like, the Bible. Look, if directions to a toaster were this bad, and toasters where people were getting electrocuted and blowing up, no one would sit around and go, well, no, it's the interpretations of the toaster, the directions of the toaster. We go, we need new directions.
Yeah.
So before we would sit here, there's a simpler way. Look, no matter what we do, if we have a page of how to live life, be kind, people are going to misinterpret it. But we can do a better job. And it sounds so weird because we grew up with it. Get rid of the fucking Bible. Get rid of it. It's caused too much. How much more time do we want to spend that people find things in it? And then
I'll go you one further. Get rid of God.
Well,
we don't need God.
Well, let me tell you
And
something.
that's my.
Let me tell you something. Before you're going to do that, what you're going to have to do, because I always say I take on organized religion first. That's my biggest beef. But if somebody said, I don't believe in organized religion, they've done too much destruction. There's some that are better than others. Some are fighting to make organized religion better, and I do give those people credit.
Yeah, Scientology, for example.
But if somebody said, I just believe in God, I don't need a middleman.
Right.
That's not my bigger gripe,
Right.
But believe me, if you're going to get people not to believe in that, it reminds me of you have to tell them what the negative of it is, because I understand people go, if somebody believes in God, forget about organized religion. Somebody believes in God and it works for them. How's that hurting you, Todd? And I know the answer, but it takes too long. And
let's ask Ryan. Can you see a negative from religion?
Oh yeah, negative from religion.
I'd love to hear from you on this. Tell us.
Oh, I mean, I think, where do you begin? I mean, I think it pacifies people in some, certain kinds of religion promises a kind of future paradise so that it disempowers them to be the people they ought to be here and now in the world.
We have a man of the cloth saying what I've been saying forever.
So if you say, like,
it changes how we live our lives, is what you're saying.
Right. It's like, basically, if I tell you that in 20 more years, I'll give you, your own island in the Pacific with a mansion and all of everything you want, and all you have to do is respect me for those 20 years and not say anything bad about me. I'm just making this up.
I get what you're saying.
Well,
then,
let me
what
add
else
this
are you
to
gonna,
it.
then you're just gonna like kick back and say, like, minimum common denominator.
Add one aspect to that. Just give me 10%.
Yeah, and you have to pay.
Now we've turned it into a fucking Ponzi scam.
Well, that's
Scheme.
Ponzi
scheme.
Yeah,
Scam.
that's the. Well, I mean, I think basically any nonprofit runs off donations, and I think
But my
some
point is,
churches
if you
require
lie to someone about what they're going to get in exchange for their money, they're breaking laws in this country. That's breaking laws. If you lie to someone. Now,
Yeah.
I don't believe that you stood on your altar and you lied to people. I think you believed what you were saying.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I mean,
So-
everybody has to try to be as sincere as they can be under the circumstances.
Right, but did Bernie was Bernie Madoff lying? I mean, you know what I mean? To me, they're the same.
I think in
They're just the
religion,
same.
there's probably Bernie Madoffs and people that from their heart of hearts do believe what they're preaching.
Right.
But
Oh
there's
yeah,
definitely
there's plenty
some,
of sincere people that believe that they're right and other people are wrong, and they must. It's almost, here's the other thing that really I found that religion does. like religion, like we have these feelings of being, we need to be kind to one another. We need to be loving and all the things that Jesus says about turning the other cheek and being loving your enemies and forgiving people. And yet religion, because it's exclusive in its truth claims, almost requires you to be mean and exclusive and condescending to people who disagree with you. Otherwise, you're not being a faithful Christian. So if you disagree with me, I'm required to take you to task over that.
But, here's, again, trying to simplify it. If we made this about a human being and used one barbaric act that organized religion has done, but placed it on a human being, we wouldn't be sitting here having a conversation whether Mel was worth respecting or not. If we said, yeah, Mel was going around the neighborhood and telling black people that they shouldn't marry white people and telling gay kids that they should pray, we wouldn't be sitting here, oh, I wonder if Mel's good, I wonder if Mel's bad, I wonder if Mel, Mel misunderstood, Mel, but what are you talking about? Mel's crazy.
Yeah.
Why are we discussing it? Mel is crazy on what? Don't you want to hear more about Mel? Here's what I think about Mel. Can I tell you something good Mel did? Mel gives a lot of money to other people on the block. Mel. Be like, Mel, you told me 2 things about Mel. I don't need to know anything else.
It's funny you say this because what I
does that make sense?
It does, but it seems to me like we have to get past a certain point to see when Mel is crazy. In other words,
do we? Hasn't he done enough?
Well, when you're in the moment, and Mel's doing something that is considered mainstream and normal, he doesn't seem crazy. You go 20 years down the road and look back at Mel walking around talking about black people. Now it's 1980 instead of 1955.
But the thing is, some of the things...
My grandma said it. My grandma said, I don't have anything against black people. I just think it makes it harder for the kids when they have kids that they don't fit in. You know what I'm saying?
Biracial
That's
people.
what my grandma said.
I remember that argument.
And she doesn't fit in. So my grandma was right.
Hey.
What? Sorry.
I have some questions from the people on the wall, if you don't mind.
Let's do one.
Okay, what are your thoughts, Ryan, on the outpouring of support you've received from the atheist community versus the reaction of the Christian
How much money
community?
was raised, by the way? Do you know yet?
Oh, last I checked, it was 23,000.
23 grand. Hemet, what's
Meta.
Hemet Meta started a fundraiser after you were fired from your job. You were kicked out of your church. You decided to post a blog saying that you were going to be live as a non-believer or an atheist for a year, and then you were summarily fired from your job at a Christian school. Is this all accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I was a contract professor, and so the next contract came up, and they said, you're just going to have to take a year break from this because I have to sign a faith statement
in order to work there.
It's on the back side of the contract.
Yeah.
Because they've made a covenant with the parents and the donors of the school that it's a Christian school and all the professors have to abide by a particular belief system. So yeah, and from a purely technical perspective, I understood that was my department chair was just kind of, that was the situation he was in. I wish it would be different, but it really is above his pay grade to change any of those types of things. So yeah, I lost my employment there at the 2 schools. And
were you surprised when Hemet started raising money?
I was, yeah, because I mean, he originally, like a lot of the atheist community, they were like, you can't just be an atheist for a year. You're either an atheist or you're not. And I really understand.
Let me be one of the first to say, yes, you can. You're welcome. Do whatever the hell you want to do. This country is
I'm so glad you said that because I grew up where my parents said study every religion.
Yeah.
And I think if I can make a little bit of an experiment with amongst my friends that I've asked this. It's funny when you raise children. I like you don't want to mirror the type of behavior that we don't like, and that's going, you can't just do it for a year. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, do whatever.
And if it doesn't work for you, we hope
right.
you're here, you're loved, and guess what's going to happen when you go back? You'll still be loved.
Right.
But most kids, when they grow up, my parents, they didn't say it, but they did it, that we could study any religion we wanted. There was a kid next door invited me to we were Jewish I was Jewish by birth. There was a kid next door that went to Bible camp. He wanted me to go. My parents said, go, learn about Buddha, learn about this. And basically what they said was, and whatever you believe, whether it's what mommy and daddy believe or not, you'll be loved. It's funny then how a child might come to a conclusion based on facts.
Yeah.
When you take out all the fear. What will happen if I don't agree with what you believe in? We'll love you the same.
Right.
Now go decide what you want to do. Not based on any, you can't do that and you won't be loved here. So
yeah.
It reminded me when you said, yeah, it's okay.
Sure.
It's okay, it's
That's
all
how
right.
I feel about it.
So, I mean,
if you if you lived as an atheist, like you're saying, if you spent a year, I would have you on the show as often as you want to come sit at my mic for the record during that year. Let me add something to that. If you find your way back to your belief system,
Right.
We'll still support you.
you're welcome in that chair anytime. Anytime.
Cool.
You're welcome in my house
Well, you know,
anytime.
by
And
the
let me
way-
finish. Let me
I'm sorry,
finish this
sorry.
thought. No, please. Here, let me add something to this. That's this. I'm not sure that you wouldn't be better. You wouldn't serve mankind better back in a church, changing it from the awful things that they do.
Well, and that's what people said to me when I was in the church and why I stayed in the church as long as I did, because when I came up to, I mean, my conscience was wrestling with these sorts of things. I mean, for the longest time, the church wouldn't ordain women to be clergy. And just in North America, recently in the Adventist church, they've decided to do that. It took, until 2013 for them to figure this out. And there's a part of me that's like, I'm tacitly endorsing this by being employed by this organization. And then people would say, yes, but you're also doing a lot of good. Maybe you can change it from the inside. And so I would stay and do my best. And my local church really was an example for me of the best effort that, I mean, we had a ton of young people. We had, a Buddhist who was a part of our congregation. We had atheists that came to church with us and engaged with us in interesting conversations. I really wanted to create a space for people to explore their questions about life, mystery, the meaning of, our existence, and not say like questions are off limits. I mean, at the very best, are all of our traditions, our biblical tradition, the biblical tradition, all the narratives and stories that we tell over and over and over again in different ways. I mean, you guys are, artists, filmmakers, and I mean, there's only a couple of stories that we keep telling again and again. Like some people say, like there's one story is, man goes on a journey. Another story is a stranger comes to town. Those are basically the two stories,
Yeah.
So we keep telling these same stories. I mean, Jesus
Well,
story is a stranger comes to town.
Job is a pretty good story, I got to tell you, and awful and heinous.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story. I mean, so all of these stories have value as stories, and that's why I think the Bible, rightly understood, it's not an instruction book. It's not like read it and do it. The old joke is, a guy was looking for some inspiration. He takes the Bible, he like thumbs through and puts his finger, closes his eyes, sticks his finger in the Bible. And, he opens his eyes and it says, and Judas went and hanged himself. And then he said, oh, no, let me try this again. So he closed the Bible, like put his finger in and it said, what you do quickly. So it's like, this is not the way the Bible is meant to be used.
I don't know. I think God wanted that guy dead. I'm not sure I agree with you. All right, listen.
So how did I feel about the money? The guy
That's what
wanted to know.
I wanna know.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? The fact that atheists jumped up. We
Yeah.
raised $128,000 for the atheist who told
Rebecca Vitzman.
Rebecca Vitzman looked right down the barrel of
Do you
that
know about this
camera
story?
and told Wolf Blitzer, "I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
I
an
heard.
atheist."
I
don't
heard
believe
that
it." Yeah.
story, and then
And
she got.
Doug Stanhope launched a fundraiser.
She was threatened or
128,000.
something
Oh, I
after
don't know.
that. Or?
No,
I don't know about that.
know.
No, oh, okay. I thought she got some really bad things happen to her.
No.
Everybody does.
That's my
because
next question.
That's because anybody can send a message across the internet to somebody
Right.
from the basement of their grandma's home while jacking off.
Have you
That's the
been
problem.
receiving threats or any kind of really bad mail?
No, I haven't received any threats, thank God. Thank somebody, whoever.
What was that you said?
I mean, it's just an expression.
We
I
say
say
it
it
too.
too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, praise Allah or God or Yahweh or whoever. And no, I haven't received any threats. And I hope I don't. That would be awful.
You will.
Yeah, I
We
may.
all do.
I
Anybody who's
think,
saying
you know,
anything receives at
yeah.
least passive threats.
I lost employment. I mean, I have friends who are worried about me, like...
worried that
Yeah.
what will happen.
I
exactly.
don't know. Just that I'm like, I lost my job and like maybe he's unstable, maybe he's going down the tubes. Like I don't know what people are thinking, and people are really they're meaningful concern that people have. That
Do you think you are?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that slowly through any thinking person's life, the layers of the onion get peeled back, and I think when you're a child. You think all sorts of things about your parents, about your life, your backyard. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my backyard seemed like the size of Central Park, And I went back, when I was 25 and visited my childhood home, and the park was the size of your living room. I mean, I was like, wow, no wonder I could hit the ball over the fence, It was just the size of a postage stamp. And, so our world expands. And when we go back to that old world, it looks so small and puny and not that, grand as we thought it was before. And so I think I just, came to the place where I just had more and more questions, and religious systems tend to be static and rigid, and they're not set up for people to explore big questions. They're really set up for people to come and adhere to answers.
Yeah.
Right? So when you sort of throw off your answers and you say, you know what, enough with the answers, let me think about some other questions. And then people, well, those aren't questions that you should be asking. And then I was the pastor encouraging people to ask questions. And people came to that church for that reason. Many, not for that reason only, but many people came for that reason. And it just became untenable. Like it was like the Bible says, new wine in old wineskins. This idea that wine lets off gas as it ferments, and the wineskins are rigid. The old wineskins are rigid, and when you put new wine in old wineskins, it just bursts.
Right.
So.
Another question, real quick, please. How do you?
So I'm grateful. That's the answer. I'm grateful.
How do you feel now that you've left the church? What is your next step, and what do you say to those that aspire to leave the church and lead a new life without it?
May I hold that one? Would you hold that? Copy that. We're going to come back to that question. Don't forget.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'd like to answer that question.
I want that question. I want to go out on that. I want to talk about that question toward the end because that's kind of where we end up. Now let me ask you.
I have more questions.
I want to ask you a question that Heather asks a lot of our guests. Do you think it's important? Does the truth matter to you? And by that I mean, if God doesn't exist,
right?
Does that matter to you?
Yes,
it's important.
Sure.
To know. Yeah,
for me it is.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think it's sort of like I said. In fact, I just said this to a friend over coffee this morning. If there is no Santa Claus, I'd like to know. I don't want to go on believing in Santa Claus for the rest of my life.
By the way, it's hard to make a 30-year-old believe in Santa Claus, and it's just as hard to convince them there's a God when they're 30. If they're not introduced to either concept till they're 30, it's hard to make a 30-year-old believe in Santa Claus and God because they now understand logic.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I find that amazing.
That's
that,
awesome. I've never heard that. I love that.
I thought about it.
About 10 or 11 years ago, I was a pastor in Philadelphia area, and I was driving down one of the neighborhood streets, and churches, a really bad idea for churches to have movable lettering signs out front because that allows them to put really asinine comments on there. And I would drive by this one church, and it always had the stupidest comments. And one, like for example, like in the middle of summer, it's hotter than hell, and they say, on the sign, "You think it's hot out here?" And I always, I'm driving through that, and I see that sign, and I'm thinking to myself, just on a pragmatic level, do they really think that sign is going to make someone go, you know what, I'm going to go to that church on Sunday. I think I'll convert and become a Christian. And I remember thinking as I was seeing that sign and having that, having that thought, I thought, if I wasn't already a Christian, I would not very easily become a Christian.
Right.
And so I think it was a birthright in some sense. It was the treasure, if you can think of it that way. It's harder nowadays for me to think of it that way. That allowed, that I was entrusted with to make it better if I could, and to try to help it fulfill its promise. But
I think it's funny you say that about the burning thing, because I always think, can't the Better Business Bureau step in with religion? Like Nike can't tell people they're going to go to hell if they don't buy their sneakers. You just can't. It's like, to me, that's like when I go back to and believe me, I'm like everyone here. And then I want to calmly go, you can't do that, and laugh. You're not allowed to do that.
Right.
That's
no,
a threat.
No. They want to react. No. At one point, you write someone off, and again. Hopefully, if you're smart, you write them off when it's time to write them off. Because we would never move forward as a society. And there's a time to go, no. You can't tell people they're going. You can't tell people they're going to hell. You can't do that. Yeah, but no. I can't listen to you. You're not allowed to do that. At one point, you have to interrupt, chastise somebody, and let them know, no. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that.
You did that on stage the other night. I was watching you talk about the war on Christmas. And let's start this, by the way. Ryan, you've seen Fox News and the war on Christmas and all of that.
Yeah.
Year after year. Where was your head on it? Where is your head on it?
I think it's just baiting, for marketing. I mean, I think it's foolish. I'd really wonder whether those journalists actually think there's a war on Christmas or whether it's just a line.
I know a lot of people that if I bait them, that I won't do the whole joke, but I have a joke.
I want you to do the bit for the audience.
I have a joke in my act that I say when people say there's a war on Christmas, most of it came from Happy Holidays. You have to say Happy Holidays to people, and I think that came. I know I grew up Jewish, and people when they said, I'm telling it this way very clearly to let you know that I don't think the change, all of it came from the people that were necessarily Jewish and were told Merry Christmas. Right. I think there's a big bulk of them like me. that someone would say Merry Christmas to me growing up, and I just thought they meant, that's the lazy way of saying it, that's the famous holiday, you know? So they meant that, whatever. I go, hey, Merry Christmas to you, too.
It's a cultural holiday.
It's a cultural
There's nothing
holiday.
in the Bible about Santa Claus. There's nothing in the Bible about Christmas trees. It's not a Christian...
So I didn't care is my point.
Right.
But when I feel like a store merchant or somebody figured out, hey, not everybody celebrates Christmas, why don't we say Happy Holidays?
Exactly. It was a marketing thing.
And by the way, that includes everybody. Seems very warm. Merry Christmassy isn't very Christmassy. Because if you now, and I'm going to pretend there's a God that I don't believe in for a second. So these people perceive, if they went up to a God and said, hey, I gotta get your input here. If we say Happy Holidays, that will include every single person, no matter what they celebrate. Or we could just say Merry Christmas, and that would include one group. Their God that they think, because I have to give him a dumb voice, because that's, he go, just say, what do we say now? We say Merry Christmas. Just keep doing that. Happy Holidays includes everybody. That don't fucking matter. And it's a bullshit argument, and I'll tell you why. Because it would be like if you owned a store and everybody said, hi, Glenn, to everybody that walked into the store. And everybody didn't care. Most people, some people corrected him and said, actually, my name's Bill. But most people went, he means hi, who cares? Right. But then the store owner said, hey, why don't you say hi? That includes everybody. And he goes, oh, my God, there's a war on Glenn. No, there isn't. There's no war on Glenn. If you're positive it's Glenn, say hi to him. But other than that, say hi. So it's those fake arguments. And by the way, some people are so instilled in what they believe in that they would rather be right than make things right. Because I'll get worked up when I tell that joke on stage.
That's human nature in general, be honest with you. That really is. Most people don't want to be wrong.
I'll tell you the truth. When I was younger, because the reason I know that expression, the reason I know that that's true is because when I was younger, I did that. Like, you know, you get in an argument with somebody, and then midway through, they say something that makes sense, and then you just keep going because you don't want to be wrong. As an adult, though, if it'll make things right, I don't mind fucking being wrong.
Seriously, the older you get, you're like, it's all right.
That's
I'll
exactly
be
right.
wrong.
Or let someone else be wrong, too. Like, just, you
Yes.
know what, they're not right, but...
Meaning I'll be wrong and meaning I'll grow. I'm not going to just go, well, I've had that thought process, so I guess I'll just go to my death with it. I don't want to be a done evolving. And I think it's funny how some people just want to be a done evolving, whether it's some atheists and religious people.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you want to be, like, why don't you want to keep evolving into your, why, with some people, their theory is, I'm done evolving.
Yeah.
So whatever change comes across them, they're like, no, I'm done evolving. I'm all done evolving. Thanks for trying, but I'm done evolving.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's not you.
No,
so
it's not Ryan.
Not
How much
you.
time do we have left here?
Well, we're going to get to this other question right now.
I have a really big question to ask.
Okay, and we're holding the other question for the end of the premium version of the show. Go ahead and ask this question.
The big question?
No. The one you want to ask. We're gonna
You're confusing me.
The
You're confusing
question
me.
you already did. Hold on to. We're doing it in the premium show.
Okay.
Now what do you want to ask?
This needs to be done in the premium show because we're not going to have time. And there's a question about morality and how you feel about where it came from.
Gosh, I'm unqualified to...
Well, I mean, you have an opinion, don't you?
Yeah, sure.
You understand the nature of that question. And by the way, you're going to get a lot of this.
No, I think...
This is rare for us, you know. We don't get this fish flopping up on the beach very often.
What do you mean by that question you're asking?
You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean by that? Like, where?
Well, people who worship God, a lot of people worship God.
We hear it
Will
constantly
say
as atheists.
to us as atheists, well, where do you get your morality from if you don't believe in God? If you don't worship God and read the Bible, well, you might as well go out and murder.
Well, I mean, I think the other way to look at that, which I think is really an interesting... you asked me a second ago whether if there was no God, whether I'd want to know that.
Yeah.
And my answer is yes. I don't know that everybody's ready for that. And I think that there is a sense in which there is a sociological God. So you know how race is a social construct? And so in a way, there are no races per se, right? Like having kinky hair and black skin doesn't make you any different than a person with straight hair and white skin. But society over the decades and centuries has made a difference, and so we have to address the problem of race because we've created it as a problem.
Yeah. There's the human race, and then there's a bunch of sprints.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, so my point is that even if there is no God, there is God in society. Like we still have God that we have to work on and address and deal with. So in that sense, I think it's important that. And now I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Morality.
Morality.
Yes.
Yes. That I think that morality is something, oh, I know what I was going to say. The reverse way of looking at this is to say that human beings, by their very nature as human beings, like our evolution, if you want to call it that, we understand that, we've come to understand that morality basically consists of a few things, that we need to have freedom to express ourselves in such a way that it doesn't infringe on somebody else's freedom. So my grandfather always used to say to me, like, what this means, son, is that your freedom to swing your fist ends where my nose begins. Like,
there you go.
You
nice.
can swing your fist all you want, but the minute it comes in contact with my nose, we've got a problem. And so that's kind of the idea of I think how people embrace freedom and the way that we're supposed to have freedom in our democracy. So I think morality, I am a little concerned, like, that it's just unhinged, like, from any foundation, and it's just floating freely in space. But I think, Feuerbach said that basically that God is the projection of all the best qualities of our morality. So basically human beings said, well, what are the good things about human beings when we're at our best? We're kind, we're loving, we're forgiving, we're thoughtful, we're considerate, generous, all of these things. And then we said, well, that's God. God will be the embodiment, the personification of all of our aspirations, our human aspirations of goodness.
Good and goals, right?
Yeah.
All right. The question we have not yet. We're gonna do it right when we get back to the premium. But that's where we gotta go.
Tag something he just said.
Tag it.
Well, again, it's not like we're arguing with you, because I feel like you're sort of more agreeing with what we're saying, basically. But, where would you get morale from? I go back to what I said before. When did it give people morale?
When did what?
When did it give people morale, believing in God? When did it? It's like, again, we go back to what year did it? Because what year?
There you go.
So, and by the way, you ask if you want to teach children from a young age, ask me or if you want to hear it said more brilliantly, ask a child therapist how you teach a child morale without having them believe that there's someone upstairs. And by the way, the reason I think just even believing in just God, forget about organized religion that's done most of it. The reason I think in our time that we're going to have to disprove even a God is because that's never even worked.
Right.
Because if it would, look how good everybody would have been, because they would believe. No one believes it. And I said, if there's no anarchy in the streets right now. I go, oh wait, there is anarchy.
Yeah.
And then people go, well, now there is. Going back to my thing, but in the 50s there was too.
Yeah,
so
there was.
It never worked.
The way you teach kids who don't believe in God morale or morality is with a fucking ruler. Okay, that's it for the free hour. We'll be making the full 90 minutes available to our premium subscribers very soon. I want to thank our guests, ex-pastor right now currently,
yeah.
Brian Bell and Todd Glass. I also want to thank my co-host and producer, Heather Henderson, and our video switcher, Sam Kramer. Tune in next week when our guest will be...
We have no idea.
That's right. We haven't booked anybody yet. Dan, we'll be talking about...
Well, we don't know.
How can we know? That's it for the free version of episode 140. Another show that went off without a hitch. We miss you, Hitch. I'm your host, Emery.
And I'm Heather Henderson. Our theme music courtesy of the sound editor of The Aristocrats, Eric Wilson. And special thanks to our Wall of Reason moderator, Joseph, living 1 year as a gym rat, Swam.
Oh, there you go.
And our digital publicist and web guru, Cameron, living 1 year as a man, Winters.
You'll give that up quick enough. Some characters mentioned on this podcast are completely fictitious. Any resemblance to real persons living or dead is purely wishful thinking. You've been listening to Ardent Atheist. Ardent Atheist is a product of natural selection.